It is now time for another interview from the backlot. This episode's guest, writer, director of Superhost, Brandon Christensen. Here we are back on Backlot 605. I am one of your hosts. I'm Casey Cutherman. Joined with me as my co-host on this episode is Sam Lentz. Sam, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
Absolutely, Sam. And today we are joined by special guest. He is the writer-director of the one of the latest Shudder exclusives, Shudder originals, Brandon Christensen from Superhost. Brandon, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Brandon, before we get into it, obviously this is not a sequel to last year's big hit on Shudder, Host, which Sam and I have made a joke about just as recently as today. But for your movie Superhost, if people have not heard of it yet, I mean, obviously I think people need to, because for me, this is one of the most underrated horror movies of the year. I absolutely loved it, had an absolute blast with it. But for people that have not heard of your film yet, can you give us a little breakdown what the movie is, what it is all about?
Sure. Yeah. Superhost is about a couple of YouTube vloggers staying at an Airbnb with a host that'll do anything for a good review. It's kind of a genre mix-up. You know, it's got a lot of lighter elements in some of my other films. A little bit more comedy and things like that. But yeah, it's kind of just like built to be a fun summer roller coaster kind of horror film where you're not, it's not ever. Like my other two films are just very oppressive, very dark, and just kind of make you feel like shit. This one definitely just, it's fun. Like, you turn it on and you have fun, which I feel like a lot of horror films aren't doing right now. Everything's just so serious and dark. So it's kind of fun to just take a little bit of a different path down the horror genre for this one. But yeah, I mean, it's just, you look at the poster, you know exactly what's about to happen when you turn it on.
Mm-hmm.
There is no surprise there. It's just why and what, sort of what happens. That's so much fun, I think, for the, someone to discover.
Yeah.
I was about to say this is very different than your first two movies, Stillborn and Z, which again, Sam, I know this is a question you and I have talked about previously with this movie. With this movie, though, what was kind of some of your inspirations for this movie going into Superhost? Was it something? Obviously, this is about YouTubers going to bed and breakfasts and reviewing them. Is this something maybe you discovered along the way of visiting a bed and breakfast yourself?
Yeah, I mean, the initial idea came from I was in Toronto for a film festival for Z a couple years ago, and I stayed at this place. It was a really nice kind of high-rise condo place. And I show up from the airport, and the first thing I do is I drop my bag and I go to the bathroom, and of course the toilet doesn't flush. So I'm forced to reach out to the superhost of the place, and we just have this conversation. Hey, I just got to your place. The toilet's not working. And he sent a security guard up to look at it. The security guard couldn't do anything. And so the actual host, had to go out, buy a plunger, and then bring it back. And, so I'm in his space. He's coming, we're having this ultra awkward small talk because he's plunging pee out of a toilet that is my pee. And it was just the weirdest situation where I was just like, what is happening right now? Like, this is such a conversation that neither of us ever wanted to have in our lives. We wanted to have the automated system, the go in, the leave, check, leave the 5-star review and get out of there. But yeah, it just turned into this, there wasn't any murder or anything like that. It was just this strange experience where I just kind of was left with this, like, God, that's such a weird thing that we do. And so, I was just kind of sitting on that for a little while. And then when I saw Creep, Mark Duplass, I was just like, oh, that's so interesting to have this antagonistic character who's awful, but you love him, you just love him torturing this guy and all that stuff. So I was just kind of thinking, like, I wonder if I could do something similar to that, where you have this Airbnb host who is pretending to be this one person and isn't really, and just sort of went down this spiral, kind of putting these pieces together.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things that I noticed immediately was like there's some elements of creep in this, but you do
Totally.
different things with it, drawing from different genres and subgenres to where it feels fresh. It feels like something new.
Cool.
And a lot of that freshness, like it comes from that Gracie Gillam performance. She's
Mhm.
she's incredible in this. She gives one of my favorite performances of the year.
Mhm.
And can you tell us a little bit about like what she brought to the character that maybe wasn't in the script, or how maybe when she got brought on, did the character change at all a little bit?
Yeah, I think a big part of it was so I was talking to another actress, Sierra McCormick, about it, and she was shooting another film that just came out that she was shooting at the same time, and so there was kind of a scheduling conflict. But she's like, "Hey, reach out to my friend Gracie Gillam. I think she'd be great for this role." So I looked her up on Instagram. I'm just sort of doing the director stalker thing, start downloading some of her stuff, just sort of trying to take in as much material of her, because we have no money. We can't do like a proper casting. If you go out to someone, you're just basically offering them the role. So yeah, I saw this thing, these teen beach party movies that she was a part of. She's singing, she's dancing, she's doing all that, and I was just like, oh, like that's so interesting. That's sort of that heightened reality that I want from Rebecca. To bring this high, like just over everything's over the
Right.
top. Everything's Stepford Wives. Everything's like that. So having her have that ability, and just like even just doing press, like she's going to be doing those endless interviews and stuff like that for Disney, and so she's going to be portraying her best self at all times when she's doing this stuff. And I was just like, that's totally Rebecca. So when we had our first chat, we talked about that, and just how there was that fakeness that she's put on before in the past, and I really wanted to tap into that. But I think the one thing that she brought to it more than I was expecting was just sort of like the goofiness of her.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
a lot more of the stuff that how I wrote it was a little bit more robotic, especially in the the early times. Like a good example for that, the interview scene. Um, Scripted, it's very robotic. Like when she stops talking, everything's like, she's just lost in her fit. Everything freezes the way it was, but it just didn't have the emotion, even though there were tears in the script and all that stuff. I feel like Gracie, with her big eyes and stuff like that, she brought more of an emotive performance than I was maybe
Mhm.
expecting in some of those early stuff. I mean, once you get to like, oh, she's gone full blown crazy. It's just like having fun. You're playing with your food,
Mhm.
but to get to that point was so important. And I think she found a really good kind of pathway to get to that crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that interview scene is just it's kind of the standout piece of the whole movie. It's
Cool.
very like you start to see the tide turn a little bit against
Right.
them, and it's like, oh boy, something bad is about to go down.
Mhm.
I love that scene.
Cool.
And something you touched on earlier is like when you talked about like the kind of like the creep aspect of it, of you kind of like her toying with these people a little bit. So when you get to the two, I don't even know if would you call them protagonists yourself to this movie, or just the main characters that we're
The main
following along.
characters, yeah. I think they're by the end of the film, at least Claire is probably the antagonist of the film.
That's
And for
so cool
that,
to hear you say that, because that's how I read it too. I was like, man,
Yeah,
by
I
the
mean,
end of the movie, you're just kind of like,
yeah.
oh, she's
It's
not great.
definitely right. It's definitely intentional.
uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah.
And with that's one thing that stood out to the most to me is like this is one of the movies that has the most relatable YouTubers I've ever seen in a movie, because they are that grating and that fake. Like, did you watch just a ton of YouTube videos to get them to that point, or what was kind of your way of going about portraying these two YouTubers in your movie?
I mean, I watch some stuff. I do like Mr. Beast a lot. I love just sort of the insanity of his stuff. And so, I mean, I definitely borrowed like the white text on the screen and the explosions
Mhm.
and things like that, like his editing style. And then another guy that I really like is MKBHD, who's like a big tech blogger. And he's got a very slick feel to it. So I mean, like the opening intro and some of the animations and stuff like that, they definitely are lifted more from that side. So to me, it was kind of just like creating this amalgamation of what I have seen out there or something like that. And I mean, if you watch the vloggers, the travel vloggers and stuff like that, it's just awful. It's that it's the huge fake thing, and that was just like, that's where I was just like, tap into that. That's what you want to do. It's and when we were doing even just like the opening scene, every take they were just like, oh my god, I can't believe people do this all the time, because it's just, when actor, it's so much energy to put out on the screen just to be like, hey guys, just freaking out, and then you have to do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again, and it was, so it's yeah, I mean, it was fun to kind of channel that and play with that. I was super worried about editing vlog style because I'd never done it before. So just like capturing that frenetic pace, the text, the animations, all that stuff. It was fun to do because it's just so opposite of how I normally would do things. So I mean, it was just kind of fun to experiment with it, but it's definitely awful.
Yeah. Well, and I, like you said, it's all intentional. It's there to kind of turn that Rebecca character against the audience goodwill, sort of, like, especially the proposal scene and that type of thing.
Right.
And what I love about this is there are some very cinematic moments. Particularly like the big picture window with Gracie Gillum looking in, like that shot is incredible. But you also blend a lot of like found footage type of material into this. And how did you go about balancing between this needs to be found footage, this doesn't need to be? Because the balance is uncanny. Like it's really half and half almost entirely, and I love that aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, it was mostly in the script. Like, it was, like the opening where she's trying to film the first impression, drops the camera, stuff. Like, all those moments are scripted because I wanted to keep kind of a fluid camera that would, it happens a couple times when she's like, after his first impression sucks, she's like, come on, do better or whatever. And she lifts up the camera so you can cut on that movement. And then there's a similar one when they're like day 2 and he's in bed and he's vlogging from bed. And then he's like, you got anything to say? And then she like bats the camera away and you cut on that action to go into the more cinematic feel. So a lot of those things like that were scripted just because I wanted to have that sort of a transitional moment where you go from raw footage to, much more clean narrative footage. But, yeah, it was just one of those things that I thought was interesting, especially for the ending where you've got the two kind of cutting back and forth. Like, you've got Rebecca with the camera and she's doing all that. And then you've got, Teddy running for his life, and it's shot for the first time. It's handheld, but it's still on the cinema camera. So it was just, it was definitely a conscious decision where to do it. There was some scenes like when they're walking out to the forest, there was a little bit more cutting back and forth in the script that I cut a whole scene out on the day because I was just like, we're just giving too much away. Let's just sort of condense this, keep it to this, the isolated crazy, screaming and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely all trying to be intentional. I didn't want it to be random. For their filming,
Right.
we'll see it. But otherwise, I wanted to keep it in that cinematic kind of point of view.
Yeah. And I think that makes it stand out as not just a found footage flick, but just in general, it's not a found footage flick.
Right.
But found footage fans are going to have a lot of fun.
Sure.
with
Yeah.
it,
Yeah. There's definitely found footage sequences in it. And I don't think I've ever seen that before where you have a film that kind of bounces like this one does. So I thought that was kind of fun to play with too. Just 'cause I'd never done it before.
Yeah. Yeah, it was something very unique that I hadn't seen before either. I appreciated that about it for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, with so many different subgenres in this movie. Like we said, it's got a little bit of that stalker aspect, a little bit of a slasher. I mean, we have a scream queen in this movie. We had the found footage. What are some of the horror movies like you grew up with that kind of maybe bled into this or influenced this in some way, shape, or form?
Ooh, that's tough. I mean, one major influence that wasn't from growing up or anything, but it was just trying to figure out a tone that I wanted to hit later on in the film after things have already kind of gone crazy was Green Room, which I was late on as well, but just sort of that feeling of being in a place where you don't have any immediate help and you have to kind of figure it out for yourself. When I saw Green Room, that was like the most intense experience I've ever had watching a movie. I was just, that was like the legit edge of your seat kind of thing. And it's such a simple idea, not the story is so simple, but it's just such a harrowing idea that you're just like, I don't know what I would do. I don't, and so you're just sort of watching these characters do what they do, and I was really kind of intrigued by that. So that was definitely an influence for the second part of the film, where they're in a place that they're less familiar with than the bad guy, but they, and it just sort of plays out how it does. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've always been, I've always been kind of a horror guy. I'm sure that just it through my subconscious, just certain things kind of bleed out because that just is how it seems to be. But I mean, from just sort of an inspiration perspective, it'd be like Creep and Green Room. Those were the two that I kind of cited going into it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can see some of those elements of Green Room, especially with kind of the similar aspect of the Mark Duplass of I like watching Patrick Stewart playing something different.
Right,
And,
for
same
sure.
with this with Gracie. Going from being this kind of teen Disney star to now she's batshit
A
crazy,
very
being
convincing psychopath.
Right.
playing a superhost, going after these annoying YouTubers. I'm like, that's that vibe. And again, you talked about it earlier, like the fun vibe of horror, and I think we're
Hmm.
seeing a little bit of that come back. What was it like for you to try to inject fun back into to horror? Because I mean, the first two movies that you did, like you said, they are dark and depressing, definitely more of a serious tone to them. What was it like going into the kind of fun, campy aspect of horror?
It was a ton of fun. I mean, we shot this during the pandemic last October. So, I mean, everybody was, the actors, they were kind of hesitant to travel and do a shoot in the middle of all this. So, it wasn't a very fun time, I think, for a lot of people. So, being able to have just a small cast and crew and just sort of, lose yourselves in the middle of nowhere and, just outside of Las Vegas. It was just a lot of fun. I mean, making horror films are pretty fun in general, just because of you're doing that elevated kind of dramatic kind of things. You're doing jump scares, you're doing things like that. Like when you're doing it on a technical level, it's never scary. It's not scary when you're shooting it because it's so precise. But when you're able to sort of shoot something like characters that are vloggers that have this a little bit more of a modern job, I guess you could call it. But and just there's just comedy in the script just by the characters and the situations, because it's just kind of endless awkward moments after endless awkward moments. I don't know, it was just a lot of fun for us to sort of to do that. And I think by the end of the shoot we were all kind of that you build those bonds and stuff like that that kind of go on forever. But I don't know, it was just a lot of fun to not. I mean, I think a big part of it too is that this movie takes place in the daytime for like 90% of it. So that was another thing, because like on Z, the first 2 weeks of that film, they were all overnights, and I think just from a production perspective, you're totally in the shit from day one,
Mhm.
compared to this where it was like 8 to 8 every day, and it would go a little later as the week went on, but we never went past like midnight. So it was just a much lighter shoot. It felt like we were just like out there having a campground. It was like a camp with a bunch. There was only like at the most when Barb was there was 14 people on set, but in general it was around 12. So it was just such a small group of people just sort of getting, going out doing this strange thing together. Yeah, I don't know. It was a ton of fun to shoot though. Like every day was kind of more fun than the last, I thought.
Mhm.
That's awesome. So, I mean, yeah, you worked with a bare bones casting crew on this. I
Hmm.
mean, on IMDb, you look at this movie, there's 4 cast members. That's it.
Right.
At any point in the development, did you have more and you cut it down due to like COVID stuff or budget restraints, that type of thing? Or was it
Uh,
always kind of very
It was
small?
it was definitely built to be small. Like we did want to get Betty and Lou in there. I was gonna show at some point when they were kind of figuring things out. Like when Sarah Claire goes on the computer at the one point, she was gonna rewind and see what happened to them in like the
Oh, yeah.
the security camera
Mhm.
footage. And it was just one of those things where it's like I don't want to get bogged down with all this story stuff right here when I have kind of the story being told. Like as Gracie's telling us what's happening, she was kind of seeing it happen, but it was just like so many things were happening all at once. So I wanted to just simplify it. And when since COVID and everything, it just added to the challenge, because it's not a matter of just getting an actor. You have to get an actor and get them tested, get them attested again when you show up. And it's just like when you have such a small budget like we did, those tests, they just add up super fast. Like right now you can get the antigen test for like $25, but back then, every test was like $100 something, and they just sort of multiply as you add things like that. So
Yeah.
it was definitely a big part of it. And then there's the scene at the very end where you see Lou and the cat, and we shot that way later, like in maybe late April or something of this year, just because it started snowing in the area and stuff. So we had to wait for that to melt and all that. But I actually dressed as Betty because I didn't want to find an older woman to play this thing. And we shot it, and just, I'm covered in blood. And it looked so stupid because the Lou that we found, which was the DP's father-in-law, he looked great because he's just a 60-something-year-old man, and I'm a 36-year-old man who was dressed like a librarian with like curly hair and like stupid glasses, and I couldn't see what I looked like really, so they're shooting it and I'm playing it, the whole thing. And it was, when I got back and I looked at the footage, I was like, oh, that's never gonna make the film. I'll show the cat and I'll show Lou a bit more, but that is never, that'll never be seen by anybody ever again. It was humiliating, but it was just
release
because,
the
like,
Betty cut, right?
yeah, for sure. It was just like it was gonna be, a second of footage, but it would have looped around and finished the dentures part of the reveal. So I did lose that, but I'm just like, I don't care. It's fine.
I think that works well even without it though. Like
It's
when
strange.
he pulls the dentures out of the toilet, it's like, oh God. Like,
yeah, but you would have seen because I was like,
reaction.
Death and 5 o'clock shadow. It was horrible.
Full Norman Bates and drag.
Yeah, it was not cool, and it's funny and it's embarrassing, but yeah, thank God we had the dead cat to play with instead.
Thank God for the
Mm-hmm.
So with like the small cast and crew on this, obviously you have a very big name in this, especially in the horror community, with Barbara Crampton. What was it like to work with Barbara on set for this one?
Barb kind of just came for 2 days in the third week of the shoot, and she just sort of took over. Like she's just such a large personality. I mean, if you see her, her social media feed, she's just she's all over the place. She's so passionate about her fans and just like updating everybody about her life and everything. It's just really fun to to have her out for 2 days, because when you cast someone like that, someone that has that kind of clout in the industry, you don't know what you're going to get. Like I've had the Michael Ironsides and stuff like that come out for a day, and you never know what you're going to get. I mean, Michael Ironside was awesome, but Barb was just, I think just because she does indie horror and she does horror in general, that she just sort of has an appreciation for it. So it's hard to just sort of convey how down she was for it. Like the first day we shot the big argument out in front of the house, and it's not, a huge deal. But the second day was that whole, the forest discussion and all the twists and turns that happened there. And you get to a point where at the end of the day, after doing, countless takes, because it's such a long scene, all of a sudden you got to get her bloody and you got to get her dirty, and you're just like, I don't know how far I can push this, and make her comfortable, because she's making no money. Everybody's making crap money because it's an indie budget, and so she's just like, that never factored into anything. It's like, okay, we got to put some blood in your mouth. She's like, give me the blood, just like chugging it back, just putting it in her mouth, and it's just like, oh, okay, I get it. Like she's not particular about things. She's just like, I want to get it. I want to get dirty. I want to have fun. And so that was really cool. Just, we put duct tape on her mouth, and at first we did like a double-sided fake thing so it wouldn't rip her face, but she's like, it's not sticking right. Just put real duct tape on. And so, in the takes, she's real duct tape's being ripped off. And it's just things like that you don't fully expect to be able to do, because she doesn't have to if she didn't want to, but she was just so down for it that it was just like, oh, okay, this is awesome. There was like, the pretense was gone. She was just chill and fun, and that was really cool. So yeah, I mean, I can't say enough nice things about Barb. She was awesome.
That's awesome. Speaking of that forest scene, like, no spoilers in this conversation, but there is a gnarly gore effect.
Right.
That, like, man, there are so many cool shots in this movie. That's one of my favorites. Can you take us behind that? Like, how did that come together? Did it change? Like, did that moment change from when it was initially scripted? And how did you make
The
that
moment didn't
happen?
really change. Like, it was kind of the moment for me, you know, that was like that's
Right.
where the entire thing shifts, where it goes from like, oh, it's beyond just games. It's no longer just a prank, bro.
Mhm.
So it was just one of those things that I had a great idea for it. Um, it was just the execution didn't, you know, it got a little less than I was hoping just because of time. I mean, we're out in the middle of the, you know, this forest thing. We have X amount of hours because the sun's going to hit the mountains, and the blood stuff's at the end of the scene. We can't like get unbloody. So we have to shoot everything kind of linearly, you know, so you're shooting it all in order. It takes forever because there's so much coverage. There was like 47 setups or something that day. And then at the very end, you've got, okay, let's finally kill Barb. It was just, you know, I basically what we did was we had the hilt of a knife, and then we had the blade separate from it, so she could hold the thing like this and hold the blade against her face like that, and then we could shoot that and do it all in reverse, and you know, do a ton of different plates of her eyes, and just getting, you know, all the
Right.
pieces that we needed, and then I would put it together in post. The problem was, you know, the whole day took so long that we had about 15 minutes to shoot that scene, that part of the scene, and it's like, typically, you know, we didn't have like a special effects makeup person or anything. It was just me and the makeup girl just sort of like holding these things, and just we had no times. We're like, we just got to go, we got to go, we got to go. And I was, you know, we hold the blade there, pull it away, pull her arm, shoot Gracie by herself, just so we have all these different pieces that I can play with. And Yeah, just sort of cobbled it together, and it was, uh, it like, I have footage of me showing a test of how I wanted to do it, and I'm kind of holding the blade here, doing all this stuff, and it looks so cool. Like with, it looks disgusting, but I could never quite match it when we were shooting it because it was just so rushed. Like I would put it, and I was like, how, I can't remember how I did that. It was so, you know, it was all this stuff, and so yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things that always kind of happens, especially on an indie. You just don't have time to do it
Mhm.
right. But I mean, it works, you know. It's the thing it has going for it is that it's like 15 frames long, so it's like boom, boom, gone, and you're just like, oh wow, you know, your subconscious picks up the weirdness of the eye and all that stuff like that. But you know, I just wish I had the ability to go and do it the way it was intended to be done because it just looked a lot more effective.
Mhm.
Right.
So, but it was cool. That was fun.
Yeah. I mean, and that shot to me is very effective. I enjoy. I don't
Right,
know. It's a shocking moment, and the way
for
you
sure.
edit it, it works around that to
Of
the point where
course.
I wouldn't have
Mhm.
even known that. You know, like
Yeah.
so. That's really cool. That's really
And kind
cool.
of even more impressive saying that you had 15 minutes to do that shot, which I think is like the big shock moment, obviously, of
Right.
the entire movie, and the moment that had me like in my living room cheering at the screen because I'm like, yes, that's awesome.
Right. Yeah, it's just one of those things that like sticks out to me because I know what it was and I know what it is, and you know, no one else has that context. They
Hmm.
just see that 15 frames and
Right.
then they're, you know, it's totally fine. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's just one of those things, you know. As long as it works, that's all that matters. And
Hmm.
I feel like for the most part it works.
So
Yeah.
speaking of playing like with the blood and all the gore in this movie, I mean, you really get to play with it a lot more than your two previous movies.
Yeah.
What was it like to play with all the blood? Where you just having obviously just having a blast on set, just throwing blood on pretty much anyone and everyone in this movie?
Yeah, it was funny because like we started shooting, I think the second week, because Gracie was only there for 2 and 3. It was a 3-week shoot, um, and so you kind of shoot the more benign scene, you know, oh, she's meeting the guests and stuff like that. But then as the day gets on, you might be able to shoot one scene with her covered in blood, and like the continuity of blood is so hard because it's,
Hmm.
you know, you as we're filming just pieces of scenes at a time and stuff like that, but when you know, you got to do the makeup for it, it's never going to look identical, and so you can kind of see how much it jumps all over the place because that, like the first time we did the blood, she had very little blood on her face, and that's I guess the two scenes you would notice that is when she's driving home after, you know, in her little epilogue thing, she's driving home
Mhm.
and then she gets out of the car. If you look closely, like she has very little blood on her face. Because every time we'd get her bloody, and it was like every day we would add some blood, we would always add more. And so it was like, it looked great the first day, but then like we shoot her killing Barb, and it's like, oh, like she got a lot bloodier that time, so we have to match that. And so it's just that's really funny just to me, just because you watch it and it's like boop and then just like a little bit here and stuff, and no one really notices it because you're not supposed to. But yeah, I mean, having that much blood in the film was pretty fun. It's like the big one obviously would be what happens to Claire in the basement, because that is it's all real. She had like a blood rig on her neck and it was just pumping out and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it's another one of those things where you just don't have any time to do it. You get 30 minutes or something like that, and you're just hoping you get a couple takes of it, and then that's it. It's just one piece of that day, because that was one of the last things we shot was Claire, because the basement, that whole sequence was the last day of the shoot. And yeah, it's just blood. I mean, blood's super tough because it is one of those things where it's like you want to do more takes, but to do more takes, you have to change, and that stuff stains your skin. So, you're pretty much just like at the mercy of the first or second take, because otherwise, you just don't have time. So, yeah, I don't know. It was just, it was fun to just sort of, get really bloody and put tarps down and just, soak up with all this gross chocolate syrup juice concoction stuff that she made. And I got to taste it when I did my death thing way later. And that stuff's really gross. It's, when you fill up your blood with that stuff, it's just, or you fill up your mouth with that blood, it's really gross, and it stays in your mouth and like buries in your teeth, and you just have like brown teeth for a few days. It's really gross. I don't know. I wouldn't want to be an actor, I don't think.
So you're not going to cameo in your next bloody B
Maybe.
movie?
We'll see. It all depends on the budget and everything.
I love that. One thing I wanted to ask more, like, because I just think the house that you are shooting in is so gorgeous. Where did you? I mean, you said you shot it outside of Las Vegas. How did you location scout and find that?
So that was a huge challenge, just because finding a house whenever you're doing a feature like Stillborn's a house movie, Z was a house movie, this was yet another house movie. It's really hard to get someone to move out of their place for like a month, because you have to sort of bring all your gear in, load all the stuff in. Curtis Harder, the producer, he was staying there during the shoot just to sort of be security and all that stuff. But yeah, it's always just really hard to find that one person that'll be like, yeah, you can take over my place for this long. That's like, I'm a psychopath. Why not? So I found this one guy up in the area, and Mount Charleston's like a little mountain town about 25 minutes from my house in Vegas. And it's really wild because you're in the desert. You're on this little windy road. Then all of a sudden you just like pop out and it looks like Colorado. It's just like tall trees, all that stuff. Like what the movie looks like. It's really weird. I love going up there. But I found this house, and it was very modern. Like it looked like a piece of granite with glass, just sort of in the middle of this residential area. And it was really cool. And I met the owner, and he was like, yeah, for sure, that's great, sounds good. And then I wrote the script around that house. And then at a certain point, he just sort of disappeared, stopped responding. So I was just like, shit, we're screwed. Like, I'm never going to be able to find another house up there. And so I was debating moving up to Canada and shooting it up there, where I shot my last two films. But I have a friend up there, Chloe Churko, and I reached out to her and I was just like, hey, I know you guys have a place up there. Do you have any friends that might let us shoot in their house? And she was just like, well, I'm up here right now. Here's a few photos of what it looks like. Do you want to come see? And I was just like, I'm heading there now, because the pictures, she sends me that big living room and stuff like that. And I'm just like, I'm getting in my car, I'm going up. So I drove up there. Their whole family was there. They were just kind of hanging out on the weekends like they do. And they were just super casual about it. They're like, yeah, sure, you can take over our house. It's fine. It's just kind of like a second, home. They have places in Vegas too. But yeah, I'd known them for a long time, and it was just one of those things where, they knew me enough to know that I wasn't just some jerk off that was going to come and ruin their house. But it's just, you never know. I mean, they were just like super welcoming, and I offered them a dollar amount, and they asked for half. So like their negotiation skills are kind of lacking, but but they were it was awesome. They only, and because of COVID, like no one could come out to set and see stuff. They did come one day to just to check it out real quick, but yeah, it was just kind of like they just stepped away and left, and then came back when it was over, and it was it was fine. There was no damage or anything. We were so small that our footprint was not really too bad. There was some like sharp shampooed carpet or something like that, but beyond that, nothing too bad. But yeah, I mean, the house kind of makes the movie. You get
Mhm.
if you get a crappy little house or whatever, it just doesn't work. So being
Yeah.
able to have that space and have it cheaply and all that stuff, it's just like such a huge movie maker because that's where the movie is. The movie is the house, and so we got really lucky.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say the house is maybe like the 5th star of your movie, honestly.
Yeah, for
It's
sure,
it's really
definitely.
cool.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of transition into my final question I like to ask here, and I'm gonna put a caveat in front of it for you, Brandon. You can't say creep as your answer for this.
Oh, okay.
If you're gonna pair Superhost with another movie and you were gonna show a double feature, let's say in theaters, what movie are you gonna pair it with?
Creep. Uh, I don't know. I mean, that's tough. I mean, I can't. I can't really think of something that's not creep that kind of compares in tone and everything because that was such a big inspiration to have these murderers of this kind, and just trying to create a situation where you like them more than the main characters. um I don't know, maybe something like uh, a Friday or a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, maybe Dream Warriors or something, because that's another situation where you have a murderer, even though it's supernatural and in your dreams, but they are the movie. Like Freddy is the
Mhm.
movie. It's you want to you're there for him to watch him kill these people in fun ways that make you laugh and get kind of grossed out. So I think if I can't pick creep, uh that's the only other character that I can think of right now at the moment that has kind of that larger than life personality
Mhm.
that can and will kill the main characters in horribly fantastic ways. So I mean, when I think of pairing this with something, I think about pairing it with, and instead of having a silent kind of killer like Jason or Michael Myers or something like that, having that jovial presence that is they're
Mhm.
having fun while they're doing their job. um I think you kind of have to match it with that.
that's awesome.
Now I
Yeah.
have to see Freddy Krueger and Rebecca team up to kill a bunch of teenagers at some point. Like that, just that image in my mind is perfection right now.
Yeah, she kind of handles them when they're awake, and he handles them when they're asleep.
There you go. Freddy versus Becca.
Right. Becky. Yeah, for sure. It's yeah, it'd be fun. I don't know. There's been a lot of sequel requests online. Like people want to see more of Rebecca, and I think the whole necklace thing. I think it leaves a lot to the
Mhm.
imagination of what happened prior to getting to that house, and how she dealt with Betty and
Mhm.
Lou. I have no idea. That was definitely not something I was expecting, because you make a couple demon movies and everyone's like, demons are franchise. You can franchise around a demon. And then I made a little kind of random serial killer kind of thing, and everyone's like, we need a sequel out of this. It's not a demon, but I don't
Mhm.
know. So it'd be fun to explore that more, because I
Mhm.
think I think there's a lot to play with in her kind of just sort of the ballpark that is Rebecca.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, congrats on this movie, man. It's seriously, it's something else. I think Casey and I both dig this a lot. And
Cool.
yeah, we're so happy it's on Shudder for, multiple people to be able to check out. And yeah,
Yeah, add it to your 31 days of horror watching, if you're going to be
Mhm.
doing that. Get it on
yeah,
there, because it's fun.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then I'm just gonna ask one more question because just because we are in about the Halloween season. What do you have any big plans for Halloween? What's gonna go on in your household? Maybe some movie watching, little costume parties or anything?
I was actually supposed to be going to Europe to shoot a new film, but I think that it's being pushed to early next year. So that was going to be my Halloween plan, but it doesn't sound like it's going to happen. I would say, I mean, my wife is definitely the Halloween one of the family, even though she hates horror. She just likes planning the family outfits and stuff like that. So she'll be in charge of all that. I'll try and get my kids to watch something like, they enjoyed Goosebumps, the movie last year.
Mhm.
I bought all of the Are You Afraid of the Darks on iTunes, so I need to get them into that, but I don't know. They don't do very well with horror. So it's always a challenge to get them to watch anything. I feel like the Goosebumps TV show would be pretty good though.
Oh
I don't
yeah.
know. It's just one of those things where usually I'm working and it's hard to sort of like remember what month it is. But this year I might be able to actually just sit back and try and watch a movie a day, and we'll see. I mean, it's still where are you guys located?
We're out in South Dakota, so
Oh, okay. So yeah, COVID's
yeah.
a little different there than it is here.
Yeah.
Here it's
Mhm.
that they just put the rules back in pretty much. They kind of follow California's lead, so I have no idea what it's going to look like. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, trick or treating alone was different last year
Mhm.
than normal, just because of all the
Yeah.
the masking and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. You guys have good plans, or what's happening? I don't do that much.
I mean, our local, so we had a local historic theater just open up,
Oh,
actually,
cool.
literally in the middle of the pandemic.
Nice.
They restored it, and they've been doing late night screenings of like
Cool.
B movies and stuff. We just saw Tremors, and
Oh,
they have
awesome.
4 late night movies in October, and I
Okay.
think we're probably going to be hitting those up. So
Mhm.
That's sweet. They have good
yeah.
popcorn?
Oh yeah,
Oh, they do
Yeah.
have they have excellent popcorn.
That's
Yeah.
they
good.
do.
That's the
It's
whole thing.
delicious
Mhm.
popcorn. And yeah,
Yeah.
building is gorgeous. It's so fun watching movies
Mhm.
there. So
It's pretty bad timing to start something like that, but
yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, if it works, do people go out to it? Like, does it stay pretty
yeah.
busy?
Yeah.
That's
I was
It's
cool.
gonna say
it's
we were just at Tremors and it was sold out at 10
Nice.
o'clock on a Saturday night. So
Cool.
yeah,
yeah,
That's a good movie too.
yeah.
That's
yeah.
sweet. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, Vegas is the opposite of something like that. There's new things and then slightly less new things because everything that if it reaches like 5 years old, they're gonna tear it down and start something new. So yeah, we definitely don't have anything like that. We're
Mhm.
doing a screening of Superhost at my friend's festival, and it's at like a small art house film theater, but it's still very modern and like everything's not very many seats because they're all recliners,
Mhm.
things like that. It'd be nice to have that kind of non-stadium seating, old kind of just sort of that ambience when you go to a film is something that we don't really get anymore.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
cherish that. Try and keep it going because those things are pretty rad.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
A-
Hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'll be our October, and we're gonna very much throw it out into the world. If you have not watched Superhost yet, please do so.
Yeah.
Like we have said, this is on Shudder. Put it on your October watch list. Is a perfect for that. Perfect fun movie, even a fun late night movie. But Brandon, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
This was awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. My
Yeah.
pleasure.
So happy to
Thanks,
talk to
Brandon.
you, and yeah, thank you so much. And we'll have to talk again whenever you do have something else down the road.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It sounds good.